The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia is now in session. L'audience du Tribunal pénal international pour l'ex-Yougoslavie est ouverte. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Yes, Mr. Knight.
Before we get on with the evidence, there are one or two procedural matters that I must ask the Chamber to deal with pretty well immediately. It may be that if I identify the issues now, either as to all or some, the Chamber would think it most helpful to come back to them later in the morning, either at the beginning of the last session or at the end of the last session, although dealing with things at the end of the last session is always a problem because we always run out of time. The first three matters are very short and can be dealt with in public session. Then there are two very short matters, two matters to be dealt with your leave, in a private session. The first, then, topic is the 92 bis applications, or the 92 bis position as to certain witnesses. I sought to raise the issue of Mr. Henry yesterday and got it wrong. The position is that his first but not his second statement have been approved for 92 bis, and although Mr. Reinvold will be taking and to deal with that, we would be grateful for your ruling in relation to that. Next Monday, K6 returns.
On whom we've already made a ruling.
And yes, he's returning, and as I understand it, will be able to give evidence with facial distortion and a pseudonym. The question arises as to the 92 bis potential for that witness. William Walker arrives on...
Just pausing there, I think from our usual rulings in respect of witnesses of that type, that I would be inclined to say that he was someone who should give evidence live. The insider.
Expresses a different view, perhaps you'd be good enough to let us know. William Walker has made himself available at short notice and at personal inconvenience to come on Sunday night, I think, for arrival after a long jet flight here on Monday morning, with a view to being taken as a witness on Tuesday. We would be asking the Chamber to consider those parts of his statement that may cover territory already covered by others to be the subject of 92 bis, to save valuable court time and to minimize the inconvenience to him. But perhaps we can return to those issues, but insofar as they are outstanding, that will be Walker, I suspect, at the end of the morning.
Mr. Nice, if we granted 92 bis for those parts
Yes.
that you think are, forgive the expression, 92 bisable, how long would his examination in chief be?
I'll have to come back to you on that later this morning as well. If you'll give me leave to come back on that, I can't give you an accurate estimate at the moment.
We ought clearly then to deal with witness K6 on Monday, if at all possible.
Monday, there are implications for others who have to look after him and so on. And that, incidentally, may involve, yes, I'm grateful for being reminded, it's possible that that would involve putting back two witnesses, Ramadani and Avdili, although I'm anxious not to do so because they've already been here in The Hague some time. Depends whether we get through to them today. Unlikely. Can we go into private session for two topics?
Would it be sensible to deal with Mr. Henry's second statement, and also on the 92 bis point? And also, I have in mind the statements of Messrs. Gemini, Popeye, Ramadani, and Avdili as being admissible under Rule 92 bis, and it might be sensible to take them all. Yes. Well, subject to anything the accused has to say on the matter, and he should be heard, we propose to admit the statements, Mr. Hendry, both statements, and the statements of those witnesses I've read out under Rule 92 bis. Mr. Milosevic, is there anything you want to say about that?
I have a general remark to make in view of the fact that my cross-examination time has been shortened by your 92 bis rule, where statements are given in writing, testimony is given in writing, that this very seriously limits my possibilities of cross-examining the witnesses in the interests of truth. And the second point is that I still haven't received William Walker's statement. I hear that this is he's going to be here on Tuesday, is he? It's Friday today, as you well know.
We'll raise that.
Thirdly, my third point, you still haven't given me an answer, although I asked you twice. You promised to respond to my question, the following. My associate, who has taken it upon himself to calculate all this, told me that we received 70,000 pages of documents this week, 200 videotapes and some 50-odd audio tapes, and I don't know what else, not counting all the little bits and pieces that I find on my table here this morning. But my question was to you, when do you expect me to read through those 70,000 pages, look at the 200 videotapes, and listen to the 50 audio tapes?
And the answer is this: as I told you, it's a matter which we are considering. The window of opportunity, if I can use that expression, will occur in the summer. We shall stop sitting on the Kosovo case on the 26th of July. There will be then at least 3 weeks, and we'll consider the necessary time for you to prepare for the other matter. Now, it may be that Croatia and Bosnia can be split. I'm not sure if it can in terms of preparation, or whether in fact they are so entwined that it can't be.
Well, I'm happy to give some preliminary indications, but loath to take time. I think the Chamber and the accused may be helped by knowing that my intention is to have a list of witnesses prepared for both cases, a reasonably accurate running list of witnesses to be prepared by about the end of next week. And I suspect that we will find that a very large number of those witnesses in the early stages will cover both cases. Therefore, splitting them in any hermetic way might not be realistic.
And you'll indicate, will you, which of those witnesses is could be subject to Rule 92 bis?
Certainly, of course.
We are moving some way now from the point. So the answer, Mr. Milosevic, is that we have in mind that question of time, and you're having the necessary time to prepare for the next stage of the case. We will admit the statements under Rule 92 bis. Returning to Mr. Walker, when will a statement be available?
I'll find out the detail of service, if there's been no service, and come back to it again later this morning, if I may.
I mean, clearly, something should be available tonight. Or earlier.
Yes, of course.
So the witness can have it over, the accused can have it over the weekend. It may be convenient, before we go into closed or private session, to deal with the documents we've been handed, the exhibits, the outstanding exhibits which the accused asked to be admitted. They are numbered D14, 18, is there a 9? There are 19? Oh. D14 to D19. Now, unless there's any prosecution objection, we propose to admit them. We're going to private.
Yes.
We'll go into private session.
Material disclosed in respect of the indictment. The second statement, unsigned, our records show to have been disclosed on the 27th of May. I'll check for receipts in respect of that over the breaks. And
have you got some copies?
we can sort that out by the break.
Yes. We in open session?
Prosecution calls Ian Robert Henry.
Yes. Let the witness take the declaration.
I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
If you'd like to take a seat.
Mr. Henry, could you tell the court your full name, please?
Ian Robert Hendry.
And Mr. Hendry, do I understand correctly, sir, that you're currently 42 years old?
I am.
And you have a background as a detective in both the Royal Hong Kong and the London Metropolitan Police Forces, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Now, sir, did there come a time in 1997 or 1998 when you served one of the offices of the United Nations in the Balkans?
Between October 97 to October 98, I served in the International Police Task Force in Bosnia.
And later on, in December of 1998, were you involved with the OSCE KVM mission?
In November 98, I joined the United Kingdom Kosovo Diplomatic Observer Mission and then joined the OSCE in December of 98.
Thank you. Now, sir, I ask you to direct or focus your remarks at this point to an incident on the 16th of January 1999. Did something happen that day that took you to the village of Rachak?
I was informed on the morning of the 16th that an incident had taken place at a village of Rachak on the previous day.
And did you, in fact, as a result of that information, travel to Rachak along with other individuals?
I did, Your Honour, yes.
And just very briefly, I'd ask you to tell us what you did when you got there.
We arrived at about midday at a checkpoint of the KLA on the edge of the village. After negotiating through the checkpoint, I was shown around the village and saw various sites where I saw bodies. I photographed and made observations on what I saw.
Your Honours, in view of the 92 bis procedure, I propose now to read a brief summary contained in paragraphs 3 through 13, and then I want to return for a few questions under paragraph 14. And you took a number of photographs, as you've indicated, and Your Honors, you will find that those photographs are contained in the Ratchak binder, binder 1 of 5, which have been marked as an exhibit, and they can be found immediately behind tab 5 of that binder.
Yes, have we got an exhibit number for the statements?
I have a couple of questions on that yet, if I may. Now, sir, you gave a statement to members of the ICTY, first of all, on the 25th of February, 1999, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you attended before a presiding officer of the tribunal on the 11th of February, 2002, and indicated or made a solemn declaration that that statement was true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief.
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you also give a second statement on the 15th of December 2000 and go through the same solemn declaration proceedings on the 28th of May of this year?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
Might those exhibits or those statements then be given exhibit numbers at this point?
Prosecution Exhibit 214 and 214 for the redacted version.
Thank you.
Excuse me, 214A for the redacted version.
Your Honors, by way of a very brief summary, in his statements, the witness indicates that he was initially shown the body of someone identified to him as Banouche, which reports in his statement at scene 1. Now, for benefit of the court, and in terms of some diagrams, and I believe the large maps that were in these court proceedings taken by Mr. Kelly, those are referred to on those documents as CL1, that's location 1, scene 1. Just thought I would relate the scenes in his statement to the other descriptors that you have available. He was shown a uniformed KLA soldier, by a KLA soldier, a courtyard where a man named Bidi Banouche identified the headless body of Azimi Banouche, and later at the morgue this body was labeled as RA1. Then he was at scene 2, which is location to scenes 2 and 3. A man named Ismail Bachiri informed him of the location of the bodies of 3 brothers, Arif, Sabri, and Haki Sila, who had all been shot. A short distance from this location, he was shown the body of Haidiz Yakuji, who had also been shot. At scene 3, which is location to scene 4, he was brought to a family compound consisting of 2 houses where the body of Ahmet Mustafa, who was apparently around 70 years old, was identified to him. He appeared to have been shot several times and was later identified with the morgue label RA9. At scene 4 in his statement, which is location to scene 5 in the other documents, he was shown the body of a male in his mid-30s, identified to him as Skender, who had part of a skull missing. He examined an axe that was nearby, which appeared to have a small amount of blood on it. At the entrance gate to that compound, he found a skull fragment with some hair on it, and in the house he found bone fragments that appeared consistent with the man's injuries. This house had suffered heavy gunfire damage. En route to the next location, he located and photographed a rifle grenade in the ground with a fin tail protruding. At scene 5 in his statement, which is location 5, scene 10 in other documentation, he came across a freshly dug trench, which was about 4 feet deep and 2 feet wide, which showed no evidence of recent use. He then came to a gully, where he located a total of 22 bodies in 2 groups, one comprising 15 bodies and the second comprising 7 bodies. There was a 23rd body located a short distance away, but in the same vicinity. On the northern side of the gully, he found ammunition boxes labeled in Cyrillic, indicating 7.6 caliber ammunition. Now, this witness in his statement indicates that there were no signs of drag marks or blood leading in or out of the gully. It was apparent, however, to him that some, if not all, of the bodies had been turned over. Excuse me. Blood staining indicated the location where death occurred. All the bodies were rigid and dressed in civilian clothing. There were no weapons near the bodies. The vast majority of injuries and all the bodies he saw in Rachak that day were due, in his opinion, to gunshots. He then recorded the individual details of bodies at scene 5, 1 to 23, which you will find again referred to as location 5, scene 10. He moves on then to crime location 3, scene 7. From the gully, he walked into the village to a house with the number 30 on it, where the body of Hanemshah Mehmeti was identified to him. Mehmeti was reportedly killed by a sniper, while Mehmeti was going to the aid of someone who already hit by a sniper. He was then taken to another location and shown the area where Bayram and Hanemshah Mehmeti were killed. The body of Bayram was identified to him. It was lying in a room of the family home. He did not photograph that body because he'd used up all his film. However, another OSCE member by the name of Michael Peterson apparently videoed it. He then moves on to what is referred to in Mr. Kelly's documentation as location 4, scene 9, which is a family compound where the bodies of Riza, Halim, and Janelle Bachiri were lying in a room. Villagers told this witness that they were shot by the police from a hill about 60 meters away. He also did not photograph those bodies. Jemjil Bachiri, a survivor from that incident, told the witness what happened. Moved on then to location 3, scene 8. He was brought to another location where he was shown a compound that had a 10-foot wall surrounding 4 houses. Ismet Bahimi pointed out the body and severed head of his brother Ayad Bahimi. Apparently he'd been shot first, and sometime later his head was removed. Again, he did not photograph this scene. There was damage to the family tractors, and it appeared that the house had been ransacked. In his statement, he also talks about his dealings on the 17th of January 1999 with Judge Marinkovic. He was at Stimli when he saw a buildup of Serbian forces that were there apparently to assist the investigating judge, Ms. Marinkovic. Her purpose was to enter Rachak to investigate the incident. The witness indicates that there was sporadic firing aimed at and around the village. On the 18th of January 1999, the witness spoke with Judge Marinkovic in relation to the investigation into Rachak. She stated inter alia that the purpose of her visit was to show the world that the bodies were not of innocent peasants, as Walker had said, but that they were terrorists. She, and this is my paraphrasing, said that they found evidence that proves the villagers were terrorists because they found uniforms, trenches, machine guns, and bombs. He then, in his statement, goes on to indicate attending at the mortuary on the 19th and 20th of January 1999 to observe the post-mortems of some of the deceased persons from Rachak performed by the forensic pathologists from both Pristina and from Belarusia. He videoed some of those proceedings. Now, Your Honors, I propose at this point to show 5 photographs to assist the trial chamber with respect to evidence heard from witnesses concerning their observation of bodies and their conclusions that the bodies had been mutilated, shot at close range, or decapitated. You'll recall there's been extensive cross-examination about that, and in fairness, and to assist the trial chamber to see whether or not there was any basis for those comments by the witnesses, I propose to show, first of all, photograph 007-32320. And Mr. Usher, if you could put that on the Elmo. This is a photograph showing an unusual eye injury. You will recall evidence about witnesses talking about mutilation in eyes. Witness, I'd like you to look at that photograph. Do you recognize the scene depicted in that photograph?
I do.
Yes. Now, is this one of the photographs you took, or is this just a photograph of a scene that you recall when you were there on the 16th of January?
It's one of the photographs I took.
All right. And, all right, thank you. The next photograph, please. Yes. Photograph 00732364. These are all in the Ratchak binder in sequence, Your Honors. Again, Mr. Hendry, is this one of the photographs you took?
It is, Your Honor.
Below and behind the right ear, there appears to be a mark. Can you describe what that mark looks like?
It appears to be an entry gunshot wound with scorching and stippling around the wound.
In your statement, sir, you indicated that there appeared to have been shot at close range. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is this one of the factors that you considered in coming to that conclusion?
It is, Your Honor.
Yep. Next photograph, 00732368. Again, sir, that's a photograph you took?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what, if anything, can you tell us about this photograph in relation to the eye area?
It appears that a bullet has entered the skull, and the passage of the bullet has caused the eyes to be distorted.
I see. Thank you. Next photograph, 00732387. Again, sir, is this a photograph that you took?
Yes, Your Honor.
We've heard evidence, sir, about mutilation of bodies and gaping holes in the chest area. What, if anything, did you note about this particular body when you photographed it?
I observed that there were two, or what appears to be two, gunshot wounds to the chest, and fluids and remains of internal organs on the chest.
And this area that you noted that's shown in this photograph, where is that wound in relation to where would normally expect to find the heart?
It was in the same vicinity.
Finally, Your Honors, a photograph that has not yet been marked as an exhibit in these proceedings. Oh, you've got it there? Yes, would you put that on the Elmo, please? That appears to be a headless torso, sir. You, in your report, indicated you saw two of them. Did you take this photograph?
I can't recall you, sir.
All right. Do you recall whether or not you saw any headless bodies while you were being shown around Ratchak on the 16th of January, 1999?
There were two, Your Honor.
Did you photograph one or two or any?
One.
Thank you. Finally, Your Honors, I'd like to show a 30-second clip of Exhibit 95. You've already seen certain portions of it. Could the AV booth help us start the video? It's only about 30 seconds. This is at a part of the exhibit, Your Honor, 95 of the video that was taken with Mr. Walker present. Yes, would you run the video, please?
Okay. We're at the top of the hill. First corpse is that of a male, probably in his mid to late 30s. He appears to have been executed by being shot at close range through the head. There are two indicators of There are two indicators of exit wounds. The man appears to have had his right ear severed. And has been shot at very close range in both the face, and I can't see where the chest exit wound originated.
There's a bullet. I just want to assess what kind of it is, because it's not fire, it's pretty big.
Got me?
Yeah.
There are significant numbers of 7.62 cardboard boxes sprinkled around the area, suggesting that those that undertook this calmly executed their victims and reloaded in the same place.
Stop the video there, please. Now, the photograph of the body that we see, the image of the body that we see in the video, is that the same person that you photographed?
It is, Your Honour.
All right, and again it showed the chest wound.
It did.
Mr. Reineveld, do you want?
Thank you. We haven't marked yet, you haven't given a number to that last photograph.
No, but I want to know who that was.
Sorry. That was a... I can ask the witness, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Witness, did you recognize that individual who was speaking on camera as having been present on the 16th of January when you were there?
Your Honour, I didn't see the man there on the day in question. However, I did recognise him as being a man named Brown, a British liaison officer.
And were you aware of his function as head of the medical team there, or were you aware of that?
Better if you call Mr. Brown.
Yes,
really.
that's fine. Thank you, Your Honour. Those are all the questions, other than having that last photograph, which has not been marked as an exhibit. Those are my questions. Thank you. Might that be given an exhibit number?
Yes.
Thank you.
Prosecution Exhibit 215.
Mr. Hendry, a technical question. The images that we saw were of apparently internal organs, some of them, spread out over the bodies or elsewhere near to the bodies. All of that would have resulted from shooting at close range, or could have resulted from being shot at such close range.
It could have, Your Honour, yes.
I must say that looking at it, one would have the impression that the organs were taken out almost manually, which is consistent with what some of the witnesses said. But what you're saying is that that is also consistent with being shot at very close range.
I believe so, Your Honour.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Milosevic.
Najpre prigovor, pošto se ovde
First of all, I have an
komentarišu
objection
detalji
since here
koji
we heard
isključivo
comments
spadaju
on details which
u domen forenzičke
are
analize, a
considered
svedok
to be
uopšte nije
an exclusive
forenzičar.
domain of forensic analysis,
mislim
and
da
this
se
witness here
ovo
is not a
samo-
forensic expert. I think that
Why don't you ask him about his qualifications?
Detektiv.
well, I can see that he's a police detective.
Radio u engleskoj policiji kao
He worked in the English police.
Mr. Henry, help us about your qualifications to deal with this evidence. What is your background in forensic matters?
Your Honour, I served as a detective in the Royal Hong Kong Police for 6 years, dealing with murders and rapes and other serious crimes. And I've served in the Metropolitan Police Service in London for some 13 years, and the last few years as a detective. And I've served in Bosnia and in Kosovo, where I've dealt with and seen numerous gunshot wounds, and have worked with forensic pathologists and scientists on similar cases.
Yes?
Pa to je u stvari cijela logika
Well,
moje primedbe. Vi
that
imate
is the
izjave
whole point
forenzičkih
of my
stručnjaka,
comment. You
ovdje
have statements
saslušavate
of forensic
o
experts,
sadržini
and here
pravo
you
iste
are
materije
taking
svedoka koji nije stručnjak.
evidence on the same
Ali da
subject
pređem na
from a
pitanja,
witness who is not an
prethodno
expert.
bih hteo da
But let me turn to
raščistim
my
neke
questions.
stvari.
First of all, I would like to clarify some things.
Before you do, it's right that we should deal with your comment. Any question of qualification or appropriateness of this witness to deal with the matters which he does are matters which go to the weight of his evidence. Nothing else. You can cross-examine him about the matter. Yes.
Pa moje je vreme veoma ograničeno, pošto
Well,
ga
my
vi
time is extremely limited.
klasifikujete po 92 bis,
And
jel
since
tako? Jesam dobro
you
razumeo?
classified this witness as a 92 bis, am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, you've got an hour.
Pa onda, evo, vezano za ovu primedbu,
Well,
jeste
in
vi
that
uopšte
case,
nekakav
concerning the
medicinski
previous
stručnjak?
topic, are you, sir, a medical expert at all?
No, quite well he's not. He's given his background.
Upravo sam vam to i tvrdio i
this
nije
is
bilo
exactly
potrebno, ali vi ste
what
mi
I
rekli da ga pitam o
claimed,
njegovim
and
kvalifikacijama.
You told me
Pa sam
to ask him about
zbog
his
toga ga pitao.
qualifications, and this is why I put this question to him.
Dobro, da idemo na nekoliko stvari.
But all
Prvo,
right, let's turn to
pre nego što pređemo na
other
ova konkretna
issues.
pitanja,
But
na
before we
nekoliko
focus
mesta
on
u vašoj
specific
izjavi
issues, let me ask you the following. In
vi
several
kažete, kao na
instances
primjer na
in your
prvoj strani,
statement, for example, on page 1,
vidjeli ste u crnim uniformama,
you
pa
say that you saw people in
maskirnim
black
uniformama
uniforms,
UČK
and
u
then you
selu.
say in
Onda ne
camouflage
mogu da
uniforms
kažem
it was the
koliko sam
KLA soldiers
drugih
in the
vojnika
village,
video
and
tog
then you go
dana,
on to say,
a na
I
dnu
don't know how
strane,
many other
kad
soldiers
govorite
I
o
saw
tome da su
that day, and then at the bottom of the
vam
page
rekli,
you
kažete, rečeno mi
say
je da je ovako
that
uklonio
you were
tela
told
vojnika
that the
pre nego što
KLA
su
had
stigle
removed the bodies of
snage MUP-a i
the
vojske
soldiers
Jugoslavije,
before the MUP
što je naravno nelogično.
forces and the
Opet
VJ PLA forces arrived, which of course is illogical. And at that point you say that you cannot remember how you obtained this information, and you also cannot remember the identity of the person who gave you this information. And then you go on to say that you don't know the identity of any of the KLA soldiers or military police and so on. So, for example, on page 5 you say, I'm not in the position to confirm the source of the information. This is the spot where you talk about the detaining of the civilian population. And then on page 6 you talk about mass graves near Orahovac, where there are remains
Mr.
of some
Milosevic, you must
missing
come
persons.
to a question.
Dakle, citiram 7-8 mesta gde nije mi poznato poreklo ove informacije. Kaže, nisu mi poznate lokacije ili poreklo ove informacije.
You do not have information about locations or the source of the information given to you.
Navoda koje
So
ovde
that
dajete
means
nije
that a
poznat,
number
nije vam
of
poznato čak ni
allegations
poreklo
stated by you
informacije koje
here
pominjete u
is something that you don't
Da li
know
je to
the
logično
source
za jednog
for.
profesionalnog
So
policajca?
is it
A
something
izjavi
that
od
is
7 strana
logical
jedno 8
for
puta
a professional
objašnjavate
policeman
da
to
vam nije
state?
poznat identitet, da vam nije
So
poznata informacija, da vam nije poznat
say
broj,
on a number of
da su vam
occasions
nisu
that you don't
poznati
know the
poreklo
identity, you
informacije
don't
i tako
know
dalje.
the source of
Da li je to
information
logično
and
za
so
jednog
on. Is it
policajca?
logical for a policeman to state something of this kind?
Do you think you can deal with that or not?
Your Honour, I reported what I was told as faithfully as I could. It is correct that I do not know or cannot recall the identity of some of the sources.
Pa dobro, kad prepričavate nešto što vam je
Well,
rečeno,
when
a
you
ne
are
znate i ne možete se
retelling
setiti
something
izvora
that you were
informacije, jer se
told
to
and you
zove u
cannot
običnom
remember
jeziku
or you
rekla
don't
kazala.
know the source of the information, isn't that something that in lay terms we describe as hearsay? Rumors.
I believe that's a matter for the court, Your Honour.
Dobro, da raščistimo još jednu stvar. Rekli ste kad ste
All
dolazili
right,
u
let's
Račak,
clarify another issue.
da
You
su vas
said that
zaustavili
when you came to Račak, you were
pripadnici
stopped
UČK
by the members of the KLA
specijalno obučeni u crne
who
uniforme,
were
dobro
dressed in
naoružani i tako
special
dalje.
black
Jel' tako?
uniforms, well armed and so on. Is that right?
Piše, nosili su crne
This is what it
uniforme
says
sa
here. They
oznakama
wore black
UČK, bili su
uniforms
dobro
with KLA
naoružani i tako
insignia, they
dalje.
were well armed and so
Jel'
on.
tako?
Is that right?
Your Honour, that is correct, except I didn't say they were special.
Ja sam citirao crne
Well,
uniforme
I
i dobro
quoted your
naoružani.
words, black uniforms, and they were well armed.
Jesu li to ljudi u crnim uniformama?
Your Honours, I don't normally interject, but if the witness is purporting, I'm sorry, if the accused is purporting to quote to the witness a direct quote, then at least the English translation of that doesn't use the words well armed. It's armed with, and then describes it. I think that should be
Yes.
put to the witness accurately.
Yes, quite right. Yes, let's move on.
Molim vas onda da
Well, in that
uzmete
case,
srpsku verziju
I
u
would like
kojoj
you to look
piše
at the
dobro
Serbian
naoružani.
version, which
Ja
says
nisam
well
čitao
armed.
englesku
I
verziju i
did
ne
not
mogu
read
stalno
the
da
English version, and I cannot
gatam da li se razlikuje engleska ili
look
srpska
into
verzija.
crystal ball
Mislim da je
to
to
see
odgovornost
whether
onih
the
koji
English and
isporučuju
Serbian
materijale, a ne
versions
moja.
are identical. I think it's the
Ali moje
responsibility of
pitanje
those who
glasi,
provide this
a
material to
proverite
me.
na srpskom
But
tekstu da
my
piše
question
dobro
is as
naoružani, da
follows.
piše
I would like
reč
you to
dobro.
check the
Nisam
Serbian
izmislio.
version and see that it
Jesu li
says
to
well
isti
armed.
ona-
I did
Yeah.
not invent this.
What language did you make your statement in?
English, Your Honour.
Your Honour, just looking at the statement served 24th of May, there is the word well armed used under the 16th of January. Yeah.
Let's find it.
Second paragraph, page 2 of the statement served 24th of May.
Which date statement?
It's the interview of 12/10/2000 and 17/10/2000.
Your Honours, I have found the location. First of all, in the first statement.
Which statement is that?
It refers to.
It's the second statement. It seems to be the second statement.
Yes, and I acknowledge that although in the first statement simply says armed with, that in the second statement in the now paragraphed numbered. Was it 2? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding it.
It's page 197181 on the top right-hand corner, second paragraph.
Yes, I see it now. The number 2, it does say he's now referring back to his first statements and says they were well armed, but their weaponry did not appear to be different. So I see that. Depending on which statement you're looking at, one statement simply says armed and the second statement says well armed. I accept that and I apologize.
Dobro, ja primam izvinjenje gospodina Reinefelda, ali
Mr. Reinefeld's apologies, but I think that Mr. May, you cannot draw a conclusion immediately that what the other side says is correct and what I say is incorrect. I think that is one more manifestation of complete bias that we have seen here.
Move on, Mr. Milosevic.
Ovi ljudi u crnim uniformama, dobro naoružanim, da li su to otprilike takvi isti koji su se na raznim snimcima vidjeli u pratnji gospodina Walkera u raznim prilikama
on
za vreme
various
vršenja
occasions
verifikacione
during
misije?
the verification mission's term of office.
Can you answer that or not?
Your Honour, I cannot.
Dobro.
Very well.
Ko vas je obavestio o događaju u
Who
Račku?
informed you about the
Molim vas samo
occurrences in
da
Račak?
radimo ekspeditivno,
But
da
let's be
kratko, ja ću vam
expeditious,
postavljati kratka pitanja,
brief.
kratke odgovore.
I'll ask short questions, you give me
iskoristili
short answers to make the best use of our time.
The head of the Human Rights Division, Sandra Mitchell.
Dobro.
Sandra Mitchell, all right. And you were told that there were a large number of fatalities, human fatalities. Now, do you remember what the figure that was quoted was? How many fatalities?
At that time, Your Honour, it was just a large number.
Vama je Ken Markuson iz
Ken
lokalne jedinice
Markuson from the
KLM-a
local
rekao da se
KLM unit
15.1.
told you that on the
nalazio
15th
na
of
određenom
January he
položaju
was
u
at a
neposrednoj
certain
blizini
position
Račka.
close to Račak.
To jest na istom
That is to
položaju
say
na
that he
kome su
was
se
in
nalazili,
the same
kako ste
position,
izjavili,
which
tenkovi
is
vojske
where the
Jugoslavije
tanks, as you
i
said, of the
snajperi. Da li je
Yugoslav
to
army
tako?
and snipers were located. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honour.
Ali to znači da su jugoslovenske
Does
vlasti
that mean that
prethodno
the Yugoslav
obavestile pripadnike
authorities had
KVM-a
previously
o
informed the
nemaravanim aktivnostima i
representatives of the
pozvali ih da tim
KVM
povodom
of the
obavljaju svoju funkciju
activities
posmatrača?
and called them to perform their functions of observers?
I can't answer that, Your Honour.
A da je vam je Markuson tom prilikom rekao
Did
koliko dugo je
Markuson
trajala akcija
tell
i
you
kada su
how
se
long
pripadnici
the
vojske
operation
i policije
lasted and
povukli
when
iz
the
Račka?
members of the police and army withdrew from Račak?
Mr. Markuson just referred to the incident of the previous day, lasting the day. He did not tell me at what time the security forces withdrew.
Odakle ste došli u Štimlje, odnosno
And where did
Račak
you
16.
arrive
januara?
at Štimlje or Račak from on the 16th of January? Where were you coming from?
Pristina, Your Honour.
Da li ste prolazeći Štimlju, to
In
jest
passing
Račku,
through
primetili
Štimlje
pripadnike
or
vojske
Račak, did you
ili
notice members of the
policije
army
u
or the
daljoj i
police
bližoj
force,
okolini?
either nearby or at a further distance?
I don't recall seeing any security forces on my journey, Your Honour.
So the only forces that you did see were the KLA forces that stopped you at their checkpoint. Isn't that right?
Your Honour, I can confirm that I did see members of the KLA. I cannot recall whether I did see any security forces on that day or not.
How many KLA members were at the checkpoint, manned the checkpoint?
About a dozen, Your Honour. Sorry, 12.
12 of them. Now, you claim that after a short argument you were allowed to enter Račak. What argument was this about?
Your Honour, I wouldn't term it an argument. It was discussion or negotiation for us to enter. It referred to the ethnicity of the driver and interpreter that we had with us.
So on the 16th of January, the village of Račak and the surrounding parts were under the military control of the KLA, weren't they? Right?
I believe so, Your Honour.
And do you have any idea as to the number of KLA members in Račak and the surrounding parts on that day? Do you have any idea?
No, Your Honour. Sorry, no, Your Honour.
You say that on the 16th of January, your colleague, Michael Pedersen, filmed with a video camera the locations that you describe and the victims. When did he arrive in the village?
I don't know, Your Honour. He arrived after I did.
How soon after you?
I don't know, Your Honour.
Did he come alone, or did he come with anybody else?
When I saw him, Your Honour, he was alone.
In your statement, you say that on the 16th of January, when you were touring some places in Račak and the surrounding parts that you mentioned in your statement, that a KLA soldier led you in a camouflage uniform and an elderly man, that these were the people that escorted you on your tour. Is that right?
A KLA soldier in camouflage uniform did show us in the initial stages, and we were shown different locations by different members of the civilian population.
Is it true that when you investigated the scene of the event, as you donate to be place spot number 1, Azemi Banusha, did you notice a pistol casing of a 62 caliber type? 7.62 caliber type.
There was an empty case of 7.62 caliber, Your Honour.
A pistol one, right?
I believe they're used in semi-automatic or automatic weapons, as opposed to a pistol.
Well, look at page 3, paragraph 2 of your statement, please.
It may not follow because the accused is using the Serbian. What is the passage, Mr. Milosevic, you want this witness to deal with?
English, page 3, end of second paragraph, first statement.
All right, I don't think that observation is one I'm challenging. But in view of your experience, and as you explained to us, you dealt with killings during your long career. Can you make an assumption as to who could have shot the bullet which left that casing?
No, Your Honor.
But you claim that the photographs of this scene indicate the absence of any signs of armed battle. Is that what you're saying? Do you claim that the photographs that you showed indicate the absence of any signs of armed battle?
My observation was that there was no indication of armed fighting at that location.
So you exclude the possibility of an armed battle, the participation of these individuals in an armed battle, right? Or do you just say on that scene, in that location?
Don't follow the questions, say so, Mr. Hendry.
Sorry, would Mr. Milosevic repeat the question, please?
Of course. You exclude, therefore, the possibility of any armed battle in which these individuals could have participated, or do you just exclude the possibility of armed battle in that particular locality?
Your Honour, nothing I saw or observed on that day indicated that the dead bodies that I had seen had been engaged in combat.
And what should you have seen in order to confirm that they had been engaged in armed combat? What should they have looked like, the dead people having been killed in combat? What should they have looked like?
Your Honour, it's not just what the combatants, if that's what they were, it would look like. It's actually other indications in the vicinity. Empty cases, weapons, discarded munitions, damage from the use of those munitions.
Yes, so you go back to the location, like you said a moment ago, you said location. Now, can that mean that those participants in armed combat were brought to that location where there was no armed battle or combat?
Your Honour, nothing that I observed on that day indicated that the bodies of the men and child and woman had died at another location other than those ones where I was actually told and shown that the body had been moved and the location where the body had been taken from.
All right, now if the bodies had been moved, the bodies which are moved, the bodies could have been brought in from somewhere. Isn't that so?
I don't believe so, Your Honour.
How do you know what distance these bodies were moved from, whether they were moved 5 meters or 50 meters or perhaps 200 meters? How could you tell?
I spoke to various people and was shown and observed different locations which indicated where people had died and then where they had been moved to.
Did they explain to you how these people had in fact died?
On some occasions, yes.
And in that ditch or gully where you saw the bodies, did they show you that?
I was shown a number of bodies in the gully, yes.
Did they tell you that at the top of the gully was the police who allegedly fired at those people?
No, Your Honor.
They didn't tell you that story, did they?
No, Your Honor.
How long did you stay in that location?
Which location?
The place where you explained that, in your opinion, there were no traces of armed battle, as you explained it, etc.
Your Honor, are we referring to the first location, the first body?
Which location?
Well, let's say the first. How long were you in the first location?
I couldn't say, Your Honor.
How long were you at the scene in the village?
Until the late afternoon, Your Honor.
I think we have what time you got there.
About midday, sir.
In describing location 2 on page 3, you say that you examined the bodies of 3 males. Could you describe to us how you conducted this examination?
Initially, I observed the bodies from a distance, approached, and then visually observed each body in turn, and then attempted to turn the body over to examine to see whether there were any injuries on their backs.
And you say that in addition to the, next to the bodies of these 3 men, you saw no empty casings. Does that mean that no firearms were used?
No, Your Honor. It just means that there were no empty casings near those 2 bodies. Oh, sorry, 3 bodies.
All right. Now, how much time went by, in your opinion, from the moment of death to the moment you actually saw the bodies?
I can't say that, Your Honor.
Well, the soldier that took you on this tour, he knew where he was taking you, didn't he?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Does that mean that the KLA, before you examined all these places with the team, that they had access to the bodies?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you aware of a report of the Defilin test with the paraffin glove from the hands of people who were killed in Račak?
I am aware that the paraffin test was applied to the deceased.
Do you know of the results? What the results were?
No, Your Honor.
And were you interested in learning the results at all?
I would have been, yes, Your Honor.
ali ga nikad niste zatražili da
but
čujete.
you never asked to hear them.
Your Honour, the Serb authorities were cooperative, less than cooperative with the OSCE in this matter. I do make an observation that I believe the paraffin test has been discredited a number of years ago in the United States and elsewhere.
Yes, and that was the evidence in this case from an expert.
Tvrdite da ste pored tela
You claim that next to the bodies, on page 4 you say that, paragraph 1, that you saw a pool of blood, and it was the body belonging to Hayrizi Yakushi. Is that right?
There was a pool of blood next to the deceased, Mr.
A da li je tačno da se krv nije osušila?
Yes, and is it true that the blood hadn't dried?
Would you like to look at your statement? Okay, I don't know if you can find it for us. Judge Kwong has it. It's page 4, second paragraph.
To je lokva krvi pored
Yes,
tela
the pool of
Hayriza
blood
Yakushija.
by the body of Hayriz Yakushi.
It was still moist, sir.
Da li to znači da je bila podobna za
Does
hemijsku
that
analizu?
mean that it was well suited to a chemical analysis?
You could subject dried and fluid blood to analysis.
A da li tvrdite da je krv
And
pripadala
you claim that
žrtvama
the
o kojima
blood
govorite?
belonged to the victims that you're talking about?
No, sir.
A da li ste uzeli uzorak krvi radi
Did you take
analize
any
ili
blood
komparativne
samples
analize
to
sa krvi
analyze
tela
them
žrtava?
or to perform comparative analyses with the victims?
No, Your Honour, the OSCE had no such facilities.
A na osnovu čega tvrdite da je
So
krv
on the
sa
basis
zemlje
of what
pripadala
do you
žrtvama?
say that the blood on the ground belonged to the victims?
In this particular case, I cannot say categorically that the blood on the ground adjacent to the deceased was his blood.
A tvrdite da je telo Hayriza
And you claim that the
Yakushija
body
bilo
of Hayriz
pomerano u odnosu na
Yakushi was
prvobitni položaj,
moved
je li tačno?
in respect to its initial position. That's right, isn't it?
It appeared that the body had been rolled over, sir, yes.
A da li vam je poznat prvobitni položaj
And do you know
njegovog
the
tela?
original position
Odnosno,
of his
preciznije, da li
body?
vam je poznato
Or
kakav položaj
rather,
je
do you know what
telo ovog
position
čovjeka
the
zauzelo u
body
trenutku
of
kada je
this
nastupila smrt?
man was in when death occurred?
The body appeared to have been rolled over from lying front down and rolled over to his back. The blood did correspond to the injuries of the deceased.
Dakle, odgovor na moje pitanje da li
So
vam je
your answer
poznat
to my
prvobitni
question as
položaj
to whether
tela
you know the original
je
position of the
pozitivan,
body
je li tako?
was a positive response, right? It was yes.
I cannot say that I know. I can say that I believe from my observations.
Dobro, ako vam prvobitni položaj tela
All
nije
right,
poznat,
if you don't know the
Da li
original
to
position of the
dozvoljava?
body, does that allow,
da li to dozvoljava,
that
dakle,
allow,
uz činjenicu da je telo
along with the
pomerano,
fact that the body was
da smrt
moved,
nije nastupila na
that
mestu na
death
kojem ste vi to
did not
telo vidjeli prvi
occur
put?
in the place where you saw the body for the first time?
I don't believe so, Your Honour.
Ne verujete da je tako?
You don't believe so?
No, sir. Sorry, no, sir.
Ali ne isključujete tu mogućnost.
But you don't
Ili je
exclude the
potpuno
possibility,
isključujete?
or do you fully exclude it?
Your Honour, there were no indications that the body had been moved from another location and placed where I had seen it. There were no drag marks, there were no blood trails. The pool of blood that I saw corresponded to the injury if the body had been face down and then rolled over.
Kad bi telo bilo doneto, na primjer, u
The
šatorskom
body
krilu, da
were
li bi
brought
bilo
in
tragova
part
povlačenja
of
po
a
zemlji
tent,
ili
for
tragova
example,
krvi
tent canvas. Would there be
prilikom
drag
njegovog
marks
donošenja?
or blood traces when it was brought in?
I believe there would have been indications that the body had actually been brought in, yes.
S obzirom da ste policajac sa ratnim
Now,
iskustvom,
as you are a policeman
20
with
godina,
20 years of experience
da
at
li
your
možete
job,
kažete da ste specijalista za
can you
određeni
say that
oblik
you're a
vaše
specialist
profesije?
for certain aspects of your profession?
Not sure I describe myself as a specialist, Your Honour, but certainly knowledgeable in certain areas.
Da li ste vi pomerali tela koje ste
Did you
pregledali?
move the bodies you examined?
Some of them, yes, sir.
A da li znate da je osnovno
And
pravilo
do you
upravo
know that it is a
struke kojoj
basic rule of the profession
pripadate,
to
da
which
se na
you
licu
belong
mesta
that
ništa ne dira
on
i ne
the
pomera
scene
do
nothing
zvanične
should be
istrage?
touched or moved until an official investigation is conducted?
Is it a basic rule?
In normal circumstances, yes, sir.
And why were these abnormal?
Your Honour, I was not there as a police officer. I was there as a member of the OSCE to observe what had occurred and to draw some conclusions. There had been some conflict the previous day. The KLA were in possession of the village, and the security forces were likely to want to re-enter the village, which is actually what did occur a couple of days later.
Kada govorite o leševima sa pozicije broj
When
2
you
i
talk
telima
about
braće
bodies from
Šila,
scene 2 and
to je
the
strana
Braća
30.
Brother
pasus,
Yashila brothers,
nigde ne
it is
pominjete
the fourth
tragove
paragraph
krvi
on
na
page 3.
zemlji,
You
je to
mention
tačno?
you make no mention of traces of blood on the ground. Isn't that right?
Yes, Your Honour.
Da li je bilo krvi oko njihovih tela ili je
Was
nije
there
bilo?
any blood around their bodies or not?
Not that I observed, Your Honour.
A da li odsustvo krvi pored tela
And the
i pored
absence of blood
brojnih
next to
strelnih
bodies
rana znači ili može da
with
znači
numerous
da
gunshot
ti
wounds,
ljudi
does that
nisu
mean or can that mean
izgubili
that these
život na
people did
mestu
not lose their lives
na kome su njihova tela pronađena?
in the location their bodies were found?
No, Your Honour.
Nađete telo sa više
So if you find a
rana od
body
vatrenog
with
oružja,
several
bez
gunshot
tragova
wounds
krvi
without any traces of
i
blood,
smatrate da su mogli
and
biti
you
ubijeni na
consider
tom
that
mestu.
they could have been killed on that spot, do you?
That's quite possible, sir, yes.
A gde je onda ta krv?
Where would the blood be then? Where's the blood?
I don't understand, sir.
Kako je moguće da nema tragova
Well,
krvi
how is it
ako ima
possible that
toliko
there are
rana
no
po telu?
traces of blood if there's so many wounds
Iz
to the
vatrenog
body
oružja.
caused by firearms, by gunshot
Da
wounds?
te rane, znači moguće da te rane ne
So
krvare.
those wounds don't bleed. That would mean that.
Your Honour, when a person is injured, the wound does bleed, but it doesn't mean that blood will be liberally spread around the scene.
Pa vi je niste našli nigde.
Well, you didn't find blood anywhere, not liberally spread. You didn't find it anywhere.
Sir, I did not observe any blood. It doesn't mean that there wasn't any there.
Yes, we're going to adjourn now. We're going to adjourn now. Mr. Henry, just before we do, help us with this in case some point is going to be made about it hereafter. To what extent did you move any of these bodies when you were examining them?
I just turned the bodies over, sir.
In your estimation, how soon were you on the scene after death?
I can't say, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Henry, we're going to adjourn for 20 minutes. During the adjournment, please remember not to speak to anybody about your evidence until it's over, and that does include the members of the prosecution team.
Okay.
We'll adjourn now for 20 minutes.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever.
Oh yeah, speaking too fast. Yeah, yeah. Well, I tried to.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Yes, Mr. Milosevic.
Shvatio sam iz podataka ste vi hemičari,
Based on the information here, I take it that you're a graduate of, you have a degree in chemistry, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Recite mi koliko treba da se krv osuši?
Can you tell me, please, how long does it take, how many hours for the blood to dry up?
Your Honor, I can't answer that question. It depends on a lot of circumstances.
Otprilike.
Approximately.
I can't answer that question, sir.
Okolnosti su vam poznate.
Well, you know what the circumstances were. So, how long? 2 hours, 3, 5, 10 hours?
Više od 10 sati.
More than 10 hours?
Sir, I can't answer that question.
Suppose the victims were killed on the 15th of January and they stayed there. Can you answer that?
I would have expected most of the blood to have dried, sir, yes.
U svakom slučaju za preko 20 sati bi morao biti suv, je li tako?
The blood should have dried up in the more than 20 hours that lapsed, right?
I can't answer that, sir.
Dobro. Kad govorite o mjestu događaja
All
broj 3
right. When
opisujete
you
telo
speak
Ahmeta
of the
Mustafe
crime scene number 3,
I prilično
you
detaljno
describe
rane na
the body
njegovom telu.
of Ahmed Mustafa, and
Jel tako?
also
To je na
you
strani
describe
4,
in
peti
great
pasus.
detail the wounds that he
Tvrdite
had.
da je
This
I
is
njegovo
page
telo
4,
pomerano,
paragraph
to jest
5.
prevrnuto
You
I
claim that
pomerano
his
sa mesta na
body
kome
was
je
moved, or
pogođen.
rather turned
Na kom mestu
over
je bio
and moved
pogođen?
from the spot in which it was hit. Can you determine in which spot he was shot?
I believe that he'd been killed at that location, but had been moved.
A da li ste I vi pomerali njegovo telo?
Did you move his body as well?
I turned his body over, sir, yes.
Tvrdite da na ovom telu nije bilo
So
obuće, jel
you
tako?
claim that this body had no shoes on, right?
Yes, sir.
Ali je na sebi imao kompletnu garderobu prilagođenu vremenskim prilikama, jel tako?
There was a full amount of clothing appropriate to the weather conditions. Is that right?
He was fully clothed, sir, yes.
Da li se iz toga može zaključiti da je obuća sa ovog
Could
tela
one
skinuta pre
conclude
nego što
that
ste ga vi
the
vidjeli?
footwear was removed from this body before you saw this body?
No, sir. No, sir.
A dobro, da li vi pretpostavljate da neko
Well,
pre izlaska iz kuće
Do you
oblači džempere I
believe
kaput
that
I
when
jaknu,
somebody leaves the house, that
pa onda
person
bos izađe
would
napolje?
put on a jacket, a hat,
to
and so
pretpostavka,
on, and then
ako
leave the
smatrate da
house
obuća nije
barefoot? Is that what you normally suppose if you think that the footwear had not been removed from this body?
Your Honour, people do all sorts of things depending on the circumstances. I cannot tell what was going through this man's mind in the moments before he died.
Dobro, kad opisujete mesto događaja broj
Very
4
well.
I telo koje je
As you
identifikovano kao
describe
Skender,
crime scene
na
number
strani
4 and a
5,
body identified
prvom
as
pasu
Skender.
izjavljujete da je leš
On
pronađen
page
na
5,
polju I da je
paragraph
unet u
1, you
kuću,
say
jel
that the
tako?
body was found outdoors and then taken into the house. Is that right?
That's what I was told, Your Honour, yes.
A ko je njegovo telo s polja uneo u kuću?
Do you know who brought the body into the house?
I wasn't told, sir.
A da li ste ustanovili mesto na kome
Were you
je taj
able to
čovjek ubijen?
determine the location in which this person was killed?
There was a pool of blood and a piece of skull nearby, and that would appear to be the most likely place for the death.
Nekoga je dakle uneo u kuću
So
jer on bez
somebody
parčeta
brought
lobanje
him
nije
into the
mogao sam da
house
uđe u
because
kuću, jel tako?
with lacking a fragment of skull, that person could not have entered the house on his own. Is that right?
I was told that he had been moved into the house, sir.
A da li ste sačuvali sekiru, ne mislim, kad kažem vi, ne mislim na vas personalno,
Did
nego
you, and
mislim
when I say you, I don't mean you
verifikatori
personally, I
koja je
just mean
pronađena
the
I koja
verifiers.
vam je navodno pokazana,
Did
o kojoj
you
govorite na strani 4 u 5.
keep
pasu.
the axe that was supposedly found and shown to you, the one that you describe on page 4, paragraph 5?
No, sir.
A ko vam je pokazao tu sekiru?
And who showed it to you, this axe?
There was a gentleman at the scene. I can't recall his name, sir.
A da li je tada u društvu s vama
At that
I tada
time,
bio neko od UČK?
did you also have some KLA people near you or escorting you?
There was a KLA soldier, sir.
A da li je neko uzeo, odnosno izolovao krv sa
Did
sekire koja
somebody
vam je
take
pokazana?
or isolate blood samples from the axe that had been shown to you?
I did not.
A da li je na sekiri bilo kose?
Were there any traces of hair on the axe?
Not that I was able to observe, sir.
A da li vi tvrdite da je ovaj čovjek ubijen
So,
sekirom?
is it your claim that this person was killed with an axe?
No, sir.
U vašoj izjavi tvrdite da ste
In
vidjeli
your statement,
rov
you claim that you
dubine
saw a
oko
trench
120
which was
centimetara,
about
širine
120
oko
centimeters
60
deep
i
and
dužine
60
preko
centimeters
70 metara.
wide and
Da
about
li je to tačno?
over 70 meters long. Is that right?
Sir, I'm not very familiar with the metric systems. I was using feet. The trench I believe you're referring to was 4 feet deep and about 2 feet wide. To answer your question, I did see a trench that would appear to match your description.
Da, vi kažete to na strani 5
So,
u trećem
this
pasusu,
can be found
dakle,
on page
dubine
5,
oko 120
paragraph 3.
centimetara, širine
It was
60
about
i
120
dužine
centimeters
preko
deep,
70
60
metara.
centimeters
Je li to
wide,
tako?
and over 70 meters long. Is that right?
This has answered that.
Čemu je taj rov mogao da služi?
What could have been the purpose of that trench?
The witness to say, would you have any idea, Mr. Henry?
No, Your Honour.
A tvrdite da nije bilo znakova
But
skorašnje
you
upotrebe, je li
also
tako?
claim that there were no signs that the trench had been recently used. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honour.
A da li ste pregledali rov celom
Did
dužinom
you
tih 70
examine the
metara?
entire
Da
length
ili
of
ne?
this trench, the entire 70 meters? Yes or no?
No.
A kako onda znate da nije bilo tragova skorašnje
Well, how do
upotrebe
you
o
know
kome
that
govorite?
then that there were no traces of recent use?
Your Honour, I saw no traces of recent use.
Na strani 5 u četvrtom
On
pasusu vi
page
govorite
4,
o mestu,
paragraph-
govorim o vašoj izjavi,
Page 5,
o
paragraph
mestu
4
događaja
in
broj
your
5,
statement, you described
grupi od
the crime
15
scene
tela
number 5.
i 7
There was a
razbacanih.
group of 15 bodies
Vi za tu
and
lokaciju
7
kažete da se nalazi
scattered.
snimljena
And
na video kaseti
you say
od
that this
23.
location
januara
was taped on a
99.
videotape
vreme
on the
13:29 do
23rd of
14.
January between
Da li to znači
13:29
da se na
hours
video
and
traci
1400
o kojoj
hours?
govorite
Does this mean that
nalazi
this
samo snimak
videotape
lokacije
that you mentioned
ili i tela o
shows
kojima govorite?
only the location or the bodies as well?
Just the location, Your Honour.
A kakav značaj ima taj snimak
And what is the
koji je
significance
sačinjen 8
of
dana posle događaja
this
o kojima govorite?
footage that was made 8 days after the event?
I wanted to go back to the location to see the actual different positions with more time. On the day in question, I had very limited time.
Da, ali moje pitanje je kakav značaj
Yes, but
ima
my question
snimak
was,
lokacije,
what is the
znači same
significance
lokacije
of
napravljen
this
8 dana
footage
posle
of the
događaja?
location which was made 8 days after the event?
On the 23rd, when I returned, I made a record, a fuller record of the locations where I had not an opportunity previously.
Dobro, vi tvrdite da ste na
All
severnoj
right.
strani Jarka pronašli
You
čaure od
say that
granata.
on the north
Koliko takvih
part
čaura ste
of the
pronašli?
gully you found casings. How many casings, shell casings, how many did you find?
I didn't count them, Your Honor.
Pa otprilike 2, 5, govorite u
Well,
množini,
approximately
dakle
2,
10, 50.
4, 5, 10, 50.
There were dozens, Your Honor.
Nekoliko tuceta, znači 50-ak.
So dozens, so about 50
Na
would you
kojoj
say?
udaljenosti od tela ste pronašli ove
And
čaure?
how far from the body were these casings?
They were a few meters away, Your Honor.
A o kakvim se granatama radilo?
And what shells were they? Do you know?
I believe they were 7.62 millimeter caliber.
A da li su rane na ovim telima bile nanete granatom?
And were the wounds on the bodies caused or inflicted by the shells?
The majority of the injuries on the bodies that I saw were inflicted by gunshots. I could not say at that time whether the gunshot injuries were caused by weapons fired and then discarding the empty cases that I saw.
A da li ste našli čaure od puščane ili
Did you
pištoljske municije?
find rifle or pistol casings as well?
The empty cases are typical ammunition from automatic or semi-automatic weapons, not pistols.
A da li možete da se precizno izjasnite o vremenu
Could you be more
kada ste prvi
precise
put vidjeli ova
as to
tela?
the time when you saw these bodies for the first time?
I didn't make a record of the time. It was shortly before Ambassador Walker arrived on the scene. So if you're aware of that time, then it's possible to get the approximate time.
Je li on posle vas došao?
So did he arrive after you?
Yes, Your Honor.
A vi ste rekli da ste došli u 12
And
sati.
you said that you arrived at 12.
About midday, yes.
Znači on je došao posle podne.
So that means that he came in the afternoon.
Tvrdite da su sva tela bila prevrnuta.
You
Da
claim
li je to
that all
tačno?
of the
To
bodies
vam
were
stoji na strani 5
turned
u 6.
over.
pasu.
Is that true? One can find this on page 5, paragraph 6.
I believe I said that the majority of the bodies appear to have been turned over.
Opišite nam precizno šta vam je
Could you
ukazivalo na
describe
to da su sva ova tela bila
More
pomerana i prevrtana.
specifically, what indicated that all of these bodies had been turned over and moved?
Sir, I said turned over. On the ground next to some of the bodies, there were corresponding patches of blood to the injuries. Some of the bodies had debris, that is, dirt and grasses on their faces, which would appear to correspond to the area immediately adjacent to them.
A da li ste ustanovili ko je prevrtao
Were you
tela o
able to
kojima govorite?
determine who had turned over these bodies?
Categorically, no.
Ali je tačno da je svako od ovih tela
Is
imalo
it
na sebi
true
više
that all of these
prostrelnih
bodies
rana, kako vi kažete,
had
nanete vatrenim oružjem?
several gunshot wounds, through and through gunshot wounds?
I can't say that all of the bodies had several gunshot wounds.
Na kakvoj podlozi su se nalazila ova tela?
On what kind of soil or layer were these bodies lying?
I don't understand.
Na kakvoj podlozi su se
On
nalazila
what
ova
kind of
tela?
surface were these bodies lying?
Na kakvom tlu, na kakvoj
What
vrsti
kind of
tla?
soil are we talking about?
I would merely describe it as dirt, so I'm not an expert on soil types, I'm afraid.
Mislim, vi kad opisujete tragove
But when you
krvi, govorite o
describe
mrljama, a ne o lokvama krvi. Da li je
blood
to tačno?
traces, you describe them as spots, not as pools of blood. Is that right?
I don't believe I've described pools of blood.
Ja upravo to i kažem, govorite o
Well, that's what I'm
mrljama,
saying.
dakle, a ne
You
o
mentioned
lokvama.
patches of blood, not pools of blood.
Sir, I believe this is just a matter of semantics. What would be a pool to one person may be a patch to another.
A mrlja podrazumeva tek neki
Well, a
trag, a
patch or
lokva
a spot
podrazumeva
indicates just
veću
a
količinu.
trace, whereas
Pretpostavljam
a
da nije
pool
semantičko,
indicates
nego
a larger
faktičko.
amount. So I believe that this is not a semantic
tako ili
issue,
ne?
it's a factual one. Isn't that right?
The witness has made his comment. Let's go on.
Dobro, zar vam nije bilo čudno da i
All
pored
right.
toliko
Wasn't
rana
it
na svim ovim
strange to
telima
you
koja su
that
bila
despite
grupisana,
all
pored njih
these
postoje
wounds on these
mrlje,
bodies
a
that
ne
were
veće
grouped
količine
together,
krvi koje biste vi
there were
mogli
only
nazvati
patches
lokvama?
of blood and not larger amounts of blood that you could call pools of blood?
No, sir.
A da li ste u stanju da na vašim fotografijama i
Are you
videokaseti
able
označite tragove krvi o
to
kojima govorite?
indicate on your photographs
Samo vas
and
pitam da li ste u stanju da
videotapes
ih označite,
the
ne
traces
tražimo
of
od
blood
vas da
that
sad
you
to učinite.
describe? I'm just asking whether you're able to do so. I'm not requiring you to do so right now.
I would have to look at the photographs again.
Da li mislite da jeste u stanju ili niste
Well,
u
do you
stanju
think
da
that you would be able to
da
do that
označite
or
te
not
tragove krvi o
to
kojima govorite na
indicate
fotografijama koje
these
ste napravili?
traces of blood in the photographs that you made?
Possibly.
Yes, we got the photographs.
Da, ali onda mi to odbite od
Yes,
vremena koje
but in that
ste mi
case,
limitirali,
I
molim vas.
would ask that this time not be counted in the time allotted to me for
Yes,
cross-examination.
yes, we'll get the photographs out.
I'm not sure whether the accused is referring to the photographs shown to this witness during that portion in chief, or whether he's referring to all of the photographs in the Ratchak binder.
Any photographs will do. Just produce the photographs taken of the body.
Fotografije sa lica mesta.
The photographs from the crime scenes.
Yes, that would be in Ratchak binder, 1 of 5, and they're here. They're behind tab 5. Could we perhaps have the binder, Ratchak binder 1 shown to the witness?
Darku, da. To su fotografije te iz Jarka gdje imate
So these
15
are
tela
the
o kojima govorite.
photographs of the ravine in which there were these 15 bodies that you described.
Your Honors, it starts behind tab 5 at number 00732312, and the photographs go through for some considerable to...
Mr. Hendrick, can you find the photographs Council's talking about?
Yes, Your Honour.
You have.
Does Your Honour want a copy?
No.
Thank you.
Now, you're being asked about indications of blood. Perhaps you'd like to look at the photographs, and if you can find one that illustrates what it is you saw, put it on the overhead projector, if you would.
Yes, Your Honour.
So, we are talking about the group that the witness described.
If I may be of assistance, it's up for the witness, but I do notice that number 54 and 78 seem to describe
I am referring to the blood stains on the soil in the location where you found those 15 bodies.
Let the witness find his way through that bundle, and he can produce these photographs to us.
I wish to remind the witness, my question was as follows. Are you able
Wait a moment. Let the witness go through the bundle and select the photographs. You can then ask him questions about it later. Mr. Henry, if you would show us one by one on the overhead projector the various photographs which you refer to, and if you want to make any comment about them, do.
So this is photograph ending 352. As you can see, the deceased here has blood, or it appears blood, on his face, and to the right of his head there is debris and what appears to be blood, which would correspond to the head if he had been rolled over from a face-down position onto his back.
Yes.
Another photograph, 732378. The deceased here at the bottom left-hand corner of the picture, there's a pool, if you wish, of blood, and the body appears to have been the rigor mortis has set in and would correspond to the head.
Where's the pool? Could you indicate it with the pointer, please? Where the pool of blood that you see is?
Yes, go on.
A to je lokva krvi.
Ah, is that a pool of blood then?
Yes, let the witness go on.
This area of blood would appear to correspond to the head injury if he had been moved from a face-down position to resting on his back as we see him now.
Let's go on to the next.
Next photograph, sir, is 732354. And we see the blood there on the right-hand side of the deceased. With what appears an injury to, as we look at it, the left-hand side of the face. The body, if it was in a face-down position and rolled over from right to left, the blood would correspond to the area of the injury.
Yes.
I can show, Your Honour, a photograph of a body where it would appear the body has not been turned over and the blood underneath the head would appear to correspond to the injury.
Yes.
It's photograph 732324. The deceased was part of the main group of 15 bodies. The blood underneath the head, and I'd indicate, would appear to correspond to an injury on the deceased's head that we actually cannot see here.
Yes. Are there any other photographs you wish to say anything about?
I've not been able to find anything in the short time available, sir.
Dobro, da li vi, dakle,
All right.
samo da
Do
to
you then,
razjasnimo,
therefore, let's just clear this point up.
da li vi
Do
tvrdite
you
da
then
ove
therefore
mrlje
claim
krvi
that these patches
ukazuju
of blood, traces
da
of
su
blood, indicate
smrtonosne povrede
that
nanete na
lethal
mestu na kome su tela
injuries
pronađena?
were inflicted on the place
Sa
in which the
sigurnošću.
bodies were found? Can you say that with certainty?
Your Honour, nobody can be 100% certain. However, all of the indications are that the deceased died where we found them, albeit that some had been turned over and appear to have been searched. Documents and personal effects were found next to some of the bodies.
Znači, pored tela, oni su tu
So
izgubili
next to the
život, a
bodies,
pored
they
tela su
lost their
bili
lives
njihovi
there, and
dokumenti.
next to the bodies were their personal
I
effects, their
lične stvari.
documents and personal effects. Is that what you're saying?
Some of the deceased, sir, yes.
A da li ste možda utvrdili ko
And
je
did you
to
perhaps
pretraživao njih
establish
i
who had
prevrtao,
searched them
donosio
and
ili
turned
bilo
them
šta radio
over
s tim
or
telima?
moved them, brought them in or whatever?
I did not, sir.
A koliko ste uopšte čaura, puščane ili
How
pištoljske municije
many
pronašli u užoj ili široj
casings did you
okolini
find,
mesta?
whether belonging to
događaja broj
shells
5?
or pistols, next to scene number 5?
I believe I said earlier that there were several dozen empty cases a few meters away from the deceased.
Analizirajući vaš opis i
In
broj rana na
analyzing
telima
your
od 0,1 do
descriptions
22,
and the injuries from 01 to 22, this is on pages 6 to 9, it would emerge that these people were hit with a total of 43 bullets, and the wounds inflicted were for the most part in the region of the head, the trunk, the neck, etc. Now, in view of all this, the quantity of blood on the scene, on the ground, that they were lying on, does this correspond to the number of injuries and anatomic distribution of the wounds on these bodies?
Your Honour, I've actually I've never actually counted the number of injuries. I was only able to describe the injuries that I saw, and I'm not saying that there were not others.
So you're saying that the injuries were caused by firearms mostly, isn't that right?
It would appear so, sir, yes.
And do you have any photographs or video footage showing a single case from a rifle that you mentioned a moment ago?
I don't recall actually photographing any empty cases. As you might appreciate, sir, I had limited film, and in actual fact I did run out.
All right, you're a professional, you've been a professional soldier for 20-odd years. Is it possible that in your statement you make mention of cases and don't consider it significant to photograph the cases in the places you found them? You say you saw them. Is that logical?
He is a professional policeman, was translated as soldier. He's given his answer. He's told you why he didn't photo them. Now, Mr. Milosevic, you've had additional time. Is there anything else you want to ask this witness?
Well, yes, I do have several more questions.
Let's get on with them.
On page 7, paragraph 6, you speak of body number 13 and the presence of grasses and dirt stuck to his body. Does that correspond to the surface that the body was found on? I'm referring to leaves and grasses. Where do these leaves and grasses come from in view of the ground, the surface on which the body was found? And I'm referring to body number 13.
The location was not consisting purely of bare dirt. There were grasses and other vegetable matter, leaves and such like, lying on the ground.
Yes, but you can't see that on the photograph at all. On that particular example, the one I'm referring to. There are no leaves or grass anywhere there.
Can you deal with that or not, Mr. Henry? If you can't deal with it, just say so.
Sir, I recorded what I saw, and I photographed the bodies in situ. The dirt and debris on the bodies did correspond to the material around the bodies.
I'm asking you about the leaves and grass.
I believe I answered that, sir.
All right, thank you then. Now, you claim that you were informed that an 18-year-old Hanam Sedje Mehmeti was hit from a sniper somewhere in the village, as well as another person who was with her. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Who informed you of that?
I don't recall, sir, and the name of the person was not recorded. As you might appreciate, not every person that we spoke to did actually want to give their personal details in view of the circumstances.
And did you talk to her friends and family who transferred her to the house?
I spoke to whoever was there, sir.
ali ne znate s kim.
But you don't know who with.
As I said, sir, not all of the people that we spoke to actually wanted to give their details to us.
A da li su ti s kojima ste razgovarali
And the
bili
people you
civili
did talk
ili
to, were they
pripadnici
civilians
UČK?
or members of the KLA?
They were all civilians, sir.
Kada ste napustili Račak 16.
When did you
januara?
leave Račak on the 16th of January?
About tea time, sir, about 4 or 5 o'clock.
Tvrdite da ste 17. imali namjeru
You
da se
claim that on the
vratite u Račak.
17th
Zbog
you had
čega?
intended to return to Račak. Why was that?
As you can appreciate, sir, an afternoon to look at the events of the 15th is insufficient, and a return to the scene is always beneficial.
Na strani 10 pasus
On
4
page
izjavljujete
10,
da su vođeni
paragraph 4,
pregovori
you
oko
say that
ulaska istražnog sudije
negotiations
Danice
were held with
Marinković u
respect to
selo.
the entry of
Kakvi
Danica
pregovori i
Marinković,
sa
the
kime su
investigating
vođeni?
judge, into the village. Now, what negotiations and who were they conducted with?
A member of the OSCE, a senior member of the OSCE, discussed the matter with the judge.
I sa kojim ishodom?
What outcome? What was the outcome?
Had evidence about this from the witness. I don't think this witness can help us much more. Mr. Milosevic, you've got 10 minutes more, which means you will have had practically an hour and a half with this witness, which is more than enough in the circumstances.
Ne treba mi 10 minuta.
Well, I don't need 10 minutes.
Kažite nam, ko je na
Tell
koga
us,
pucao
please,
u
who shot
Račku
at whom in
i
Račak
njegovoj okolini 17.
and the
januara?
surrounding parts on the 17th of January?
From what I saw and the radio communication that I listened in on to, it would appear that the security forces laid down fire in the direction of the village. Whether there was any return fire, I cannot say.
A da li vam je poznato
And do you happen to know
šta se događalo
what was going
prilikom
on
preuzimanja tela iz
when the
džamije
bodies were taken from the mosque, taken over from the mosque,
radi odnošenja na
in order to
Institut za
be
sudsku medicinu u Prištini?
transported to the Forensics Institute in Pristina?
I don't understand the question.
Da li vam je poznato
Do you know
kakve su se borbe vodile
what fighting was going on
kada su sudski organi
when
preuzimali
the
tela iz
judicial
džamije da bi ih
organs were taking the
transportovali na
bodies from
Institut
the
za
mosque
sudsku
in order to
medicinu u Prištini?
transport them to the Forensic Institute or Institute for Forensic Medicine in Pristina?
No, Your Honour.
A ko je sprečavao da
And
istražni
who
sudija puna
prevented the
3 dana
investigating
ne obavi
judge
istražne radnje u Račku?
not conducting her examination in Račak for a full 3 days?
I can't answer that question, sir.
Vi ste kasnije prisustvovali
Later
radu
on,
forenzičkog
you attended
tima,
the work of the
koliko sam
forensic
shvatio.
team, as far as I was
Da ili
able to
ne?
gather, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Na čiji poziv ste prisustvovali
At whose
postupku?
invitation were you present during this forensic procedure?
It was at our request, and the director of the institute acceded to that request.
A da li ste prisustvovali i postupku skidanja
And
parafinske
were you
rukavice sa
there when
Raškova
the
vrata?
paraffin glove was taken off the bodies in Račak?
I was present, sir, yes.
A da li su vam poznati
And do
rezultati
you happen to know
tih
the
testova?
results of those tests?
He's already said that. He didn't.
Ne u vezi sa svojim prisustvom
With
prilikom
respect to his
uzimanja,
presence
prilikom
when
uzimanja.
this was
Ne vidim
taken,
zašto ne bi
I
odgovorio.
don't see why he shouldn't be allowed to answer that question.
He's already said he didn't know the results of the paraffin tests, and anyway they've been discredited.
Dobro, dakle,
All
to vi
right.
smatrate da su diskreditovani?
So you consider that this has already been discredited, do you?
Dobro.
Very well.
Dakle, svedok ne zna...
I was
So the
repeating the
witness-
evidence, Mr. Milosevic, which this witness had given, which was he didn't know the tests, the results of the test, and anyway, these sort of tests have not been supported but have been discredited.
Ujedinjenim državama.
In the
Ali ne u
United States,
Jugoslaviji.
but not in Yugoslavia.
Yes, that's correct.
A da li se
Well,
istražni postupak u
does the
Jugoslaviji
investigating
vodi po
procedure in
propisima
Yugoslavia, is
SAD
it
ili
carried
po
out according to
propisima i
USA
pravilima
rules or according to the rules and
Jugoslovenskih
regulations
It's a matter
of the
for this
Yugoslav
witness.
investigating?
Now, have you any more questions? Because you've got less than 5 minutes left.
Hvala lepo.
Thank you very much.
Hvala, časne sudije.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Gospodine Henry,
Mr.
mene
Henry,
prvo zanima jedna stvar.
I'm first of all
Kad ste
interested
stigli
in
toga
one
dana
point. When you arrived on that particular
Račak.
day in Račak,
Da li vam je rečeno kad ste bili
were
povedeni
you
gore
told when you
mjesto
were
gdje ste
taken
vidjeli
to
sve
the
ovo što ste
scene
vidjeli?
where you
Da
saw
li vam je
everything
uopšte
that you
kazano
saw, were you
da li je
told at
bilo
all
toga dana žrtava
whether
među
there were
pripadnicima
any
OVK?
casualties among the
Da je bilo
KLA on that day?
mrtvih, čak
Are there
ne.
any dead, any fatalities on their part?
Ste znali to?
Did you know about that?
I wasn't informed of any KLA casualties at that time. However, I was informed subsequently that the KLA suffered 9 casualties.
Dok ste obavljali ovaj posao koji ste radili
While
do 6
you
sati,
were
do 4
performing
sata,
this
5
job,
sati
which
popodne,
you
to
went
niste
on
znali.
doing until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you didn't know that, right?
That's correct, sir, yes.
A da li vam je bilo ko pokazao
And did
mesto,
anybody indicate the
kao što
spot?
su vas vodili na sva ova druga mesta, da li vam je
Just
bilo
like
ko
you were taken
pokazao
to all these
mesto
other
gdje se
locations,
nalazila
did
baza
anybody
OVK toga
show
dana?
you the location of the KLA base on that particular day, where that was?
No, Your Honor.
Prema tome niste tamo ni mogli da vidite da li
So
ima bilo
you
kakvih
weren't able
tragova.
to see whether there were any
borbi, krvi.
traces there of
Niste to
fighting,
mogli
of
utvrditi.
blood, or anything of that kind. You weren't able to see that, were you?
That's correct, sir.
Kad ste završili, kad ste tačno znali u kom momentu toga
At
dana,
what
kad ste
point
završili posao predveče
during
u
that day
4
when
ili
you
5
finished your
popodne,
work at 4 or
da li
5 in
ste
the
znali
afternoon, or rather,
u
did
kom
you
momentu
know,
ste toga dana znali
and at
tačno
what
koji je
point
broj
did you
žrtava?
know exactly what the number of casualties was on that day?
At the end of the day, I was able to tot up the number of bodies that I had seen, but I was led to believe that there were additional casualties that I had not seen.
Gospodin Walker je bio sa vama
Mr.
samo gore na
Walker
brdu u jednom
was
momentu ste ga vidjeli, on
just
nije
with
išao
you
dalje
up on the hill,
pre nego ste vi na
but he
kraju dana
didn't go
utvrdili
on
da je bilo
with
toliko i toliko
you at
žrtava.
the end of the day when you
Da li je to tako?
ascertained the number of casualties. That's right, isn't it?
I would not describe Mr. Walker as being with me. He did arrive at the scene in a separate party, and I did not take part or join his group.
Hvala.
Thank you.
U svojoj izjavi
In your
koju ste dali,
statement, the one you gave,
vi niste,
you did not,
a to je
and
na
this
strani
is on
5
page
srpske
5 of the Serbian version,
PHS, niste
the
dali,
BCS
niste
version.
spominjali,
You make
a
no
engleska
mention
verzija je strana
of
5,
this, and it is on
drugi
page
pasus od
5,
ozdo.
paragraph 2 from the top in the English version.
Tu ste govorili samo o tome da ste tamo
In
gdje je
that
bilo 15
portion,
leševa
you
zajedno,
just say that where the 15, there were 15
Našli
bodies
granate
grouped together, you found
kojima ste,
a
odnosno čaure od granata o kojima ste malo pre
grenade
govorili.
casing, a
Ali
shell
tu niste
casing that you
rekli
mentioned a
da ste
moment
našli
ago.
bilo kakve
But you
čaure.
didn't say that you found any casings, in fact, there.
Od automatskog oružja. Niste tada kazali
from
u toj svojoj
automatic
izjavi
weapons.
koja se
In that
nalazi na
statement,
strani 5,
that is to
drugi
say on
pasus od
page
engleske
5,
verzije,
paragraph
nigdje
2
ne
of your
spominjete da
statement,
ste
you make no mention
našli
of having
bilo kakve
found
čaure iz vatrenog
any
oružja.
cases from a firearm at all.
Your Honour, I'm not sure which part in the English statement that the Council is referring to.
Strana 5, drugi pasus od ozdo
Page
engleske
5,
verzije.
paragraph 2 from the top in the English version.
Tu samo govorite o čaurama od granata.
You just
I nigdje
refer to
niste
a
rekli
rifle
tada u
grenade,
toj izjavi da ste
and
našli i
you
bilo
make
kakve
no
čaure.
mention in the statement of any casings.
That's correct, sir.
Hvala.
Thank you.
Časni sudije, mene sada
Your
posebno
Honours,
zanima
I'm now
sve ono
interested
što se
in the
nalazi
following,
na
that is to say,
strani 7 BHS,
it refers
a u
to
stvari
page
se nalazi
7
na
of the
7.
BCS
strani,
text and
4.
page
pasus engleske
7,
verzije,
paragraph 4
čitava
of the
stranica
English
i dalje.
version, and onwards, paragraph 4 onwards.
Vi ste na licu mesta u Jarku
On the spot,
konstatovali položaj
in the gully,
svakog
you
tela,
took note of the
zar ne?
position of each body, did you not?
Generally, yes, sir, there was one exception.
Hvala.
Thank
Također ste
you.
konstatovali
You
da svako
also
telo,
took note of the fact that each body,
da li je ležalo samo ili se
whether it was
nalazilo u
lying
grupi
alone
tela,
or in a group of
ili jedno
bodies,
preko drugog,
or one
na primjer telo
over another,
9,
for
telo 10, telo
example,
12 i
body
13.
9, 10,
Čak si to
12, and
konstatovali, je li
13,
tako?
you even observed that, made note of that, right?
Yes, sir.
I konstatovali ste koje ste povrede uočili.
And you took note of the wounds you encountered.
Je li tako?
That's right, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Samo kod tela broj 6 i
Now,
7.
I'm interested
A to
in
se
bodies
nalazi na
6 and 7,
strani
and
6
that is
BHS,
on page 6
a
of the
u engleskoj
BCS
verziji je
version,
strana 7,
and
drugi
it is
pasus.
page 7,
Samo ste tu
paragraph
rekli
2.
i utvrdili ovo.
In
Desna
the
noga
7th body, you say that the right
šestog
leg
leša
of the
koji je
6th
ležao pored
body,
tog čoveka
which was
je
lying
bila
next to
blizu
the
grudi
man,
tog čoveka i
was
izgledalo je
near the
da je na
chest,
njegovoj nozi
and
nešto krvi
it appeared
sedmog
that
leša.
there was some blood from the body of the 7th corpse.
Je tako?
The right leg of the 6th body lying next to this man was positioned near the man's chest and appeared to have some blood on his leg from the 7th body. That is what you say in the statement.
Yes, sir.
Od drugih tela koja su ležala u grupi
With the
ili
other
jedno preko
bodies
drugog,
lying around in a
niste
group or
konstatovali
one
da ima
over
tragova
another, you
krvi
did not
sa jednog tela na
note that
nekom
there were
drugom telu.
traces
Je li to
on
tako?
another body from another corpse. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Sad mi odgovorite kao iskusan detektiv,
Now tell me as an
Da li je
experienced
moguće
detective, is it
da nema
possible
tragova krvi sa jednog
not to
tela na
find
drugo,
the traces
ako su
of one
pogođeni
body on
sa više
another
metaka, naročito u
if
predelu
these
glave,
people were hit from several
i
bullets,
ako su
especially
pogođeni
in
na
the
tom
region of the
mestu,
head, and if they were hit
i ako je
in
tu
that
nastupila
spot,
smrt,
and if
da
a
onda
death occurred
nema krvi
on the
koja
spot,
se prostirala
that
sa
there would be
jednog tela
no
na drugo.
body from one
Kako
no
to može
blood
da
from
objasni?
one body
Da
onto
nigde niste
another. How
našli
can you explain that? How
u
do you
toj
explain the
grupi
fact that
da
in
je
this group of
krv
bodies you found
posle tih
no
pogodaka
blood after
morala da
these
pređe
shots from one body
i na
onto another,
druga tela.
because the blood would have had to have been found on other bodies as well, from one body on another.
Vi ovde na jednom mestu imate
And in one
10.
section here,
je bio leš
referring to
muškarca
the 10th
koji je
body,
ležao
which was a
direktno
male
ispred
positioned directly below the
Let the
9th body,
witness-
etc.
Let the witness answer what you've put so far.
Your Honour, I would not pretend that my notes and observations were complete and full observation of the scene. It was not practical or possible at that time in those circumstances to treat the examination of the scene as we would like to see at home. The examination was, I admit, hurried, and I recorded as much as I could in the circumstances.
Pa u dosjeu postoji fotografija tih tela
Well, there are
zajedno. Ja vas
photographs
kao
of all these
iskusan
bodies
detektiv
together. I'm
koji
asking
je
you,
radio na
as an
krvnim
experienced
deliktima,
detective
upravo pitam.
working with
Ja moram
crimes of
tako da
this
pitam, ipak se
nature,
bavimo ovim poslom svi mi dosta
homicide.
dugo. Kako se, I tako moram da pitam, kako se krv ponaša
That's
u
how I'm
momentu
asking you,
kada se pogodi glava?
what happens to the blood when somebody is shot in the head? Does the blood spurt and splash in different directions? And if so, how is it possible that traces of that blood was not found dispersed on all the bodies? You just found the blood on...
We have the point. Now, can you deal with that, Mr. Hendry, please?
Each injury or cause of injury is different depending on the circumstances. Yes, I would have expected to see traces of blood on the other deceased. However, I did not record that. That does not mean it was not there.
Fotografije možemo pogledati, ja sam gledao te
We can take a look at the photographs. I've examined them on many occasions, and I wasn't able to find what we're talking about. But we have your answer, and I don't wish to comment.
Ja bih pokazao 3 fotografije.
But I should like to show you nonetheless 3 photographs in the time that I have at my disposal. I'll be able to get through 3.
Telo ovog čovjeka.
Did you see the body of this particular man?
Račak 2,
it is Račak 2, tab 5.
Premijer, prvo.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sad me zanima da li ga je video na ovoj
I'm interested in knowing whether he saw him on this photograph where the bodies are separate,
ili na ovoj fotografiji gde su tela
or on
zajedno.
this other photograph where the bodies are grouped together. In the first photograph, they are a good 7 or 8 meters apart. May we see that photograph, please?
Jeste li tu fotografiju videli?
Is that the photograph you looked at, this particular scene, rather?
So, Your Honour, it's difficult to see the photograph on the screen. May I look at the...
Look at it.
The photograph shows the position of the bodies when I first saw them.
This next photograph, may we see that one too, and they're all together on that one.
Koja fotografija odgovara stvarnom stanju?
Now, which photograph corresponds to the actual state of affairs as it was?
Can you help Mr. Hendry or not?
I'm trying to recall the actual photograph that I took, Your Honour.
If you can't, say so.
I believe that the photograph that I took is marked 7614, but I'd have to check my record, sir. Sir, if I may refer you to photograph 732399.
We could find that. Mr. Reinfeldt, do you think you can help us with that?
Yes, sir.
3-9.
So, Your Honour, this photograph shows the scene from a different angle, and I can confirm that I did take this photograph, and it shows the bodies as I did see them. It shows the KLA soldier who was escorting us, and 2 of my colleagues, and several of the civilian population.
So that is separate from the other bodies?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Trbuskovic, that seems to have the point.
Gospodine Henry, ja bih imao samo još
Mr.
jedno
Henry,
pitanje u vezi prve
I have
izjave.
just one more question
Rekli ste 13. leš je bio
pertaining to
ispod
your
11.
first
leša.
statement. You said that the
On je ležao
13th
na
body
leđima
was
sa
below the
obe ruke
11th
delimično
body.
ispružene iznad tela.
It was
Da li kao
on
iskusan
the,
detektiv možete da objasnite?
lying on the back with both arms partially stretched out. Can you explain this a bit further? Yes or no?
Your Honour, I believe the photograph would probably assist more than my recollection of what I saw.
Nemam vremena.
I don't have the time.
Iz drugog iskaza časne sudije,
And
već na
Your
prvoj strani,
Honors, on this
Gospodine Henry,
witness's second statement on page
ovako
1,
izjavili.
Mr.
Rečeno
Henry,
mi
you
je
said
da
the
je
following.
OVK
I was
uklonio tela
told that the
vojnika
KLA had removed
nego što su
the
stile
bodies
snage
of the
vojske
soldiers
Jugoslavije
before
i
the
MUP-a,
forces of VJ
pa ste onda
and
dodali,
MUP
kako
had
piše ovdje,
arrived. And
to su
then you
učinili kako
added
bi sprečili
the
da
following.
poginuli
They
budu
did
javno
so in
prikazani
order
i
to
da ne bi bili
prevent the
upotrebljeni
dead
u
bodies from
propagandne
being
svrhe
publicly
od strane
shown
srpskih
and
vlasti.
used
To ste čuli.
for propaganda purposes. This is what you were told. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Honour.
I sećate se da je to bio neko ko je
And you
vama kazao, a pripadao je
remember
OVK-u.
that the person who told you this was a member of the KLA. Is that right?
My recollection, sir, is that it was reported to be by one of my team who had been informed by a member of the KLA that that was the case.
Vi ste rekli ovdje da vam je tu informaciju dao
But you say
vama direktno
here
neko
that this
ko je bio
information was
pripadnik
given
OVK.
directly
Tako
to
ste
you by
kazali u ovoj
somebody
izjavi.
who was a member of the KLA. This is what your statement reflects.
Sir, I don't believe that my statement actually reflects that statement.
Mr. Trbuskovic,
Ne insistim.
let us move on. We can, in fact, read what the statement said. Yes.
I'm not insisting, Your Honor.
Hvala.
Thank you.
Interesuje me još samo
Thank you.
ovo, još ovoliko. Ovo
I'm
što je u
just
poglavlju
interested
Orahovac.
in the following.
Druga izjava,
Your
Orahovac,
second
5. strana.
statement pertaining
the-
to Orahovac, page 5.
Do you want the photographs anymore? Do you want the photographs?
Ne.
No, no.
Yeah, well, they can be taken away. Yes, we'll deal with that. We must try and finish this witness.
Gospodine Henry, ovdje ste govorili
Mr. Henry,
o nekim svojim
here you
saznanjima vezanim
speak
za
of
Orahovac.
some of the information
I
that you had
čuli ste
regarding
da su
Orahovac.
kako ste ovdje kazali,
And as you say here,
sistematski su
you
hapšeni
heard that
srpski stanovnici grada.
Serb residents of the town
I da je
were
među pripadnicima
systematically
bilo muškaraca,
arrested
žene i
and
dece.
that the detained
Pa
include
ste onda
men, women, and
navodno
children.
saznali
And
da su
then
te
you allegedly
nestale osobe
learned that these
ubijene od
missing
OVK
persons had been killed
i da
by
se tu
the
radi o broju
KLA
od 40.
and that
Od koga ste dobili
there
te
were about
informacije?
40 of them. Who gave you this information?
I interviewed a number of civilian members of the population of Orhovats reporting missing relatives and friends.
A pitam vas ovo, i to je moje zadnje pitanje,
My last
jer ste ovdje kazali,
question.
također sam
You
informisan
say here
da su mnogi
that
pripadnici OVK
I
koji
was
su
also
učestvovali u
informed that many of the KLA
prvobitnom
members
pretvaranju
involved
civilnog
in the initial
stanovništva
detention of the civilian
ili
population
pripadnici lokalnih,
were
seoskih,
members of
gradskih
the
odbranbenih jedinica OVK.
local
To znači da su to
KLA
bili
village
ljudi
or
u
town
civilu.
defense units. So
To
that
su
means
seoske
that
straže.
those were civilians. They were what is known as village guards or watches.
I can't say whether the members of the KLA involved were actually civilians or true soldiers. I just described it as was described to me.
Hvala. Hvala, gospodine Henry.
Thank you.
Hvala.
Thank you,
Krasna
Mr.
sudija.
Henry. Thank you, Your Honors.
What is it?
Microphone for Mr. Milošević, please.
Svedok. Evo
Microphone.
engleska izjava i piše ovo što tvrdi
Well, the
Amicus.
English
Ako želite,
version
mogu da vam
is here,
pročitam.
and what
I was
Amicus
told
just
that the
claimed can be found
remove
here.
the
It says
bodies
here,
of the soldiers before the arrival of VJ MU forces. This was done in order to prevent the case from being displayed and used.
Yes, we can read.
I am unable to recall how I came to be told this information or the identity of the person who supplied the information. However, I do remember that the source of the information was supposed to have been a UČK member.
Yes, we can read that. Yes, Mr. Reinfeldt.
Very briefly, I am conscious of the time. 3 very quick areas. Sir, much has been made during cross-examination about whether or not the bodies in the gully were brought to that location, and you've given your answer and told the court some of the reasons from which you derived that impression. Did you, in the course of your examination, also make any observations about the clothing and any bullet holes in clothing in relation to wounds?
Yes, sir.
And how, if at all, did that compare, and how, if at all, did that assist you in your conclusion?
Where the injuries were actually on the torso or arms or legs, the damage to the body corresponded to the damage in the clothing and the corresponding blood.
All right. Second point, in your experience, sir, if a person is killed outright and the heart stops pumping, do you expect to see more bleeding or less bleeding?
There'd be less, sir.
All right. About the issue of the drying of blood, you said it depends on circumstances. Would the depth of the pool of blood be one of those circumstances?
It could be, yes, sir.
Would the temperature, this is 15th to 16th January, be a factor?
It would be, sir, yes.
In your statement, did you notice frost or snow on any of the bodies?
Yes, sir.
In your experience, might that also prevent drying or provide reliquidation of the blood?
It could delay the drying of the blood, yes.
Finally, I was questioning about whether you would expect to find blood on adjacent bodies assuming that the bodies are upright when shot, in other words, point of impact, that's when the spray or blood would be while they're upright. Is that correct?
That's what I would expect, yes.
And then subsequently, when the bodies fall together, if they were together, would you necessarily expect the blood spray to be on the bodies lying adjacent?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendry, that concludes your evidence. Thank you for coming to the International Tribunal to give it. You are free to go.
Thank you, Your Honour.
Yes.
Next witness is Mr. Yamini, please. We're back. There is going to be further Rashak evidence, but logistically it hasn't been possible to have it all together at the same time. Although there's a slightly better scale map in the relevant binder, it may be that the Chamber would be happier continuing to use the atlas for basic geography. The Chamber's become familiar with it. I'll lay this atlas at page 10 on the overhead projector, or have that done. The Chamber will see that Celine, which features in the indictment in respect of deportation rather than specifically in respect of killings, I think paragraph 63 or thereabouts, but I come to that if necessary in due course, that Celine lies southeast of Belaserkva and is to be found on page 10 at box K22. Again, waiting for the witness to come in and using the time. Unfortunately, we don't have an usher to do it. Chamber will probably recall that there are several overhead photographs of Belaserkva. Perhaps inevitably, none of them actually is taken in the direction of Celine, but I can explain by reference to Exhibit 157 where Celine may be found, and that will help the process of orientation. First of all, the map then. On the map, it's page 10, box K22, Celine southeast of Belaserkva. And worth noting that there are roads, the red roads, coming from the north, the west, the south, several roads into the village, and they feature.
Yes. Yes, let the witness come in. Let the witness take the declaration.
I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
If you'd like to take a seat.
Your full name, please, sir.
Agim Yemini.
Agim Yemini.
Mr. Yemini, did you make a statement to investigators of the Office of the Prosecutor in Tirana on the 17th of July of 1999. Did you come to this tribunal some days ago, and did you, before a presiding officer of the appointed by the registrar, attest to the accuracy of that statement on the 3rd of June, on which day you also provided a short addendum making corrections and amplifications to your statement?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Yamini, before you came in, I'd started the process of assisting the judges with matters of geography, so I'm picking up a story partway through, and there's no need for you to say anything except to correct me if I get things wrong. May I lay on the the overhead projector, what is Exhibit 157 from the Bella Circular binder? First of all, I think there are a couple of matters of geography that I'll draw to the Chamber's attention on this to save time. The village of Saline is off to the left on this photograph. If we can now focus on no, that's probably all I need ask at this stage. There are other questions I'm going to ask in relation to this photograph for the next witness. The witness, Your Honour, produces two exhibits. Photographs. I produce them now, make more sense of the summary once I read it. That is the summary of his witness statement. Your Honour, some understanding of the immediate geography of the house in which the witness hid is necessary. I suspect that although he may be inclined to help us with more detail, survive without knowing the full complexity. But if we do need more detail, there are more photographs available. If we can look at the photographs in order, laying them on the overhead projector, please.
They should have exhibit numbers.
Certainly, yes.
Exhibit 216.
For both photographs? Thank you. We can lay one at the first. No, can we lay a colour one, please, on the overhead projector? Take them both. First one on the overhead projector, please. Yes. Thank you. This shows the view from the window of a partially completed building, one of, I think, 5 in the family compound occupied by this witness. The white building ahead is, I think, another building in the compound, but of more significance is the brick, well, they're all brick, but the exposed brick building in the foreground, which has balconies to it, and in which soldiers were stationed during the attack on this village. The witness, from his vantage point, roughly where the cameraman is, being able to overhear what was said by soldiers in the building next door. The next photograph, please. We're now looking back from the opposite side of that compound towards the house from which the witness was viewing things and in which he was hiding. It is the top exposed square window opening immediately under the roof of that building in which he was positioned and from which he was in due course to see the death deaths of members of his family. The building to the left of this photograph, the white building, is another building within the compound, but as I say, it may be that detailed local geography is not required because matters are adequately explained in the witness statement and summary. But, Your Honour, I'll ask the witness if I've adequately dealt with those photographs, and if so, may they then become an exhibit. Mr. Yamini, have I adequately summarised, and it is a summary, the effect of those photographs?
Yes.
The Chamber will probably have noted, and if not, may I remind it, that there is in this witness's statement a paragraph at page 3 of the statement where the witness gives an account of what he overheard from the adjoining house. The statement is, of course, inevitably to some degree a summary of what he overheard, and having checked this morning, the essence of it is accurate. But it is to some degree the essence, and it may be that the Chamber would prefer the passage that starts about 5 p.m. that afternoon and ending at the end of the following paragraph, a short passage, to be given live by the witness rather than simply read from the statement. I would
Yes.
In which case, with the Chamber's leave, I will now turn to the summary of the statement.
We ought to get the statement exhibited.
Given an exhibit number?
Exhibit number 217 and 217A for the redacted version.
That, of course, incorporates the addendum, I trust. And if the usher would be good enough to put the atlas back onto the overhead projector so that the area can be viewed by those watching. No, not the overhead photograph, the atlas. I'll hand it in. Here it comes. If the usher would be good enough to put the atlas on the overhead projector, please, where my thumb, there. And if the audio-visual unit would focus onto the immediate area of Selene and Bella Serpa. Statement of this witness records that now 40, having lived in the village of Selene all his life with his family, his house was located in a compound of a total of 5 houses, 3 of which, including his, were only partly built at the time. The Serb offensive, in his description, was in 3 phases, of which the first phase occurred at 5 o'clock on the morning of 25th of March, when the village was surrounded with tanks, armoured vehicles and Pragas. There was, at the time, no KLA presence in the village, and none of the villagers had any obvious reason to leave. At about 5:30, the Serb forces started to shell and shoot at the village without warning. It appeared at that time they were trying to scare villagers rather than to aim at them. Elderly, women, children, and some men left their homes and collected in open areas within the village, which they were unable to leave at the time because it was surrounded. Younger men, fearing they might be targets, decided to hide rather than to gather together with the larger groups. And the witness, with his cousin Isuf, hid in the roof cavity of the incomplete house that I've already shown to you in the photographs. That top level was a level generally unused, and he was able to conceal himself within it, being afforded a view from that window space of a large part of the village. Later that morning, a large number of foot soldiers entered the village. The uniforms he's able to describe on page 2 of his statement were of green-brown camouflage uniforms bearing the white double-headed eagle insignia, those in command wearing dark green beret-style hats, the soldiers wearing pointed partisan-style hats. At about 9:30, a number of soldiers entered the yard of his compound, shot his dog, and started looting the houses, removing valuables. They also removed satellite dishes. 2 soldiers, who from what he could overhear may have been the commanders of the offensive, took up positions on the 2nd floor of that adjoining exposed brick-built house that I drew to your attention in the photographs. Additionally, a number of soldiers took up positions in the house in which he was hiding, but underneath him, and from which they would have had a good view of the village. At about 10 o'clock, the village school was set on fire and I think burnt down, and throughout the day he was able to see soldiers looting and setting fire to the houses of the village. Again, they took satellite dishes. Can we now turn, in the evidence of the witness himself, and at page 3 of the statement, Mr. Yamini, were you from your position in the house able to hear in general conversation between the people in the next door house? Just yes or no?
Yes.
Your Honor, I should have said that the statement deals with some of the call signs, Commander 444, and the use of special codes, but the Chamber can read that in detail if it needs to. Mr. Yamini, did you at about 5 o'clock in that afternoon hear something in particular? And if so, and in your own time, will you tell us what you heard, please?
Yes. We heard a radio conversation where the question was what the situation is like in Selina, and the reply was the situation is good. How is it as well as in Rachak? No, it's twice as much as in Rachak. At that moment, scared as we were, having heard this conversation, we gathered that the number of dead was twice as much as in Rachak, approximately about 100 dead. That was the conversation which we overheard coming via radio communication.
Later on, at about 7 o'clock, did you hear something else?
Yes.
Namely?
Duhet ndërpritet ofenziva në Celinë.
The offensive at Selina
Dhe komandantët e tyre pranuan që ajo ofenzivë duhet të ndërpritet.
The commanders agreed that the offensive
should stop. Dhe ata ndërpren ofenzivën në orën 7 pasdite.
And they stopped the offensive at 7 in the afternoon or in the evening.
When you say it was to stop, who said it should stop? Was it somebody in the house or was it somebody over a radio?
Jo,
Ishte komanduar nga larg, domethënë nga distanca.
Command that came from a distance from remotely from
Ishte komanda kryesore në komandën e cila udhëhiste ofensivën në fshatin Cilin.
Command was located and which was in charge of the offensive at Selina. Whilst the local commanders in the village agreed to the order that the offensive be stopped.
I return to the summary from which I'm reading with some amplification. Soldiers stayed at points throughout the village that day, although most of them left that night. And at about 8 o'clock on the morning of the following day, his parents and 3 other family members returned to the village from where they had been in hiding. He spoke to them, and since people thought that this, the end of what the witness would describe as phase 1, was the end of the attack generally, they all decided to stay in the village. However, very shortly afterwards, the second phase began with further military units, this time thought by the witness to be special police forces, approached the village from the main road. And as the chamber will understand, the main road is, of course, the road running northwest-southeast and to the south of the railway line until just to the east of Selin. So that these soldiers were approaching from that road. There were differences between these and the uniform of the first soldiers. They had colored ribbons on their sleeves, and as we can see at page 4 of the statement, they had shaved heads, no hats, beards, and the impression obtained by the witness was that they may have been Arkan's men. His mother and father, despite being urged by him to leave the village, remained. His mother indeed insisted on baking bread, which in due course was to draw her to the attention of a troop carrier who yelled obscenities at her, but on this occasion drove by in the direction of Velika Krusha in Marda, which I think we can see just at the bottom of the screen. His relations went and hid in a basement. He returned, did the witness, to the same roof space. And within half an hour, at about 9 o'clock, there were suddenly 200 to 300 soldiers in the village with colored ribbons and so on their sleeves. These soldiers went from house to house, and at about 9:30 they entered his compound and searched every house. When they reached the second floor of the house in which he was hiding, they took up positions, apparently guarding their colleague soldiers who were there. He saw about 8 soldiers enter the house in which his parents were hiding in the basement, bring them out, and stand them in the yard. He heard the soldiers ask his father and his uncle, Shaib, if they had money. His father, his cousin Muharrem, and his cousin's wife were then taken to the houses in which they had money in order to recover money, and a substantial amount, which was then, of course, stolen from them. Those particular relations were brought back to the witness's mother and uncle. He saw the soldiers lead all 5 to a gap between the 2 houses, and he saw them all shot, falling immediately to the ground. A little later, a truck drove into the compound, and further looting occurred of property from the houses. And throughout the rest of that day, the witness observed soldiers going around the village, burning houses, using flamethrowers for that purpose, and only leaving the newer houses, such as the one in which he was hiding, which were more difficult to burn, intact. Thus it was that his house and the neighboring house where the commanders were or had been located were not burned. They also heard, he and his cousin, the sound of automatic gunfire from time to time. The soldiers stayed in the village until about 1 o'clock the next morning, and as soon as they left, the witness and his cousin left the village, not even feeling that they could check on the bodies of relations whose fate they all too perfectly understood. He made his way to Zets, which the Chamber will remember is to the west of Bela Crkva, the northwest of Salin. And on the way, and one can see the logic of this if the Chamber recalls the site at the junction of the stream bed and the railway immediately south of Bela Crkva. On the way, he saw a large number of human corpses there at that junction of the stream and the railway line. That then, in this witness's account, ended the second phase. Having arrived at Zets at about 5 o'clock that day, they rested and returned to Salin 2 nights later, not the 4 in the statement, that's been corrected in the addendum. And then he, with other villagers, would spend the days away from the village, returning at night to bury the dead. In the course of this period of time, Serb police, together it would appear with gypsies, visited the village regularly, looting houses and continuing to burn property. And so it was over the next 30 nights that this witness, as I think I explained, the mayor of his village for many years, or for several years, so it was that he and others returned at night to bury some 78 victims of this attack. Of these 78, some 18 bodies were burnt and carbonized beyond perhaps recognition in many cases.
Does this appear in a schedule of the victims?
Yes, it's in his statement. At least I hope it's in his statement. No, it's
meant to the indictment. Is this a schedule in the indictment or not?
Not, for the reasons I've given, that Salin has been dealt with as a deportation site. And although, of course, it's all integral to the, if I'm wrong about that, I'll correct the position, although it's all integral to really what is a very small area, as we can see from the overhead picture. Notwithstanding the awfulness of these events, he might not have been called as a witness, but for the very important evidence that he can give about the conversations that were overheard. But I'll just check that the victims are not in the schedule to the indictment.
Very well, we'll adjourn now. Mr. Giamini, we're going to adjourn for 20 minutes. Would you come back then to conclude your evidence? Remember not to speak to anybody about your evidence until it's over, and that does include the members of the prosecution team. If the registrar would come up, please. Yes, we'll adjourn.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever.